Hello, my name is Naja Muhammad and I am in Psychology 4353 or Physiological Psych, and today I will be dissecting my sheep brain. So I hope you enjoy. Okay, so basically we have a sheep brain here. And for my first structure, I will be talking about the cerebral cortex, which is essentially the largest part of the brain here. And the cerebral cortex contains the frontal, the parietal, the occipital lobe here, as well as the temporal lobe here. And the cerebral cortex is the largest part of the brain, as I said before, and it also facilitates higher functioning roles such as learning, memory, language, and movement and or perception. Next would be the cerebellum, which is this part here, and the cerebellum is underneath the cerebral cortex. The cerebellum here it monitors and regulates. Let me see if I can put a pin in it. B. Okay, so it regulates movement as well as posture. Whew. And then last but not least is the brain stem, which is here. And the brain stem contains the pons, the medulla oblongata, and the spinal cord. So the brain stem, its function is to facilitate, it helps us with our sleep, our breathing. It helps us to regulate our body temperature as well as digestion. Okay, so if I were to make my incision sagittally, oh wait, but before I even do that, I forgot to mention the next brain placement function. So the next portion of the brain would be the right and left hemispheres, and the right and left hemispheres are connected by the corpus callosum, which is this middle part here of the brain, which are fibers that connect the two hemispheres together, but back to the hemispheres. So the left hemisphere, its function is to facilitate language learning as well as grammar and vocabulary, whereas the right hemisphere, its function is to facilitate creativity as well as visualization and spatial recognition. So now I'm going to get into the different lobes of the brain. So we have the frontal lobe, which is obviously in the front part of the brain here. The frontal lobe facilitates higher cognitive functioning, so that has to do with decision making, problem solving, as well as it also helps us with our voluntary behavior, so behavior that we can control. Next is the parietal lobe, which is inferior to the frontal lobe, but it is also superior to the temporal lobe here. So that's this section. And the parietal lobe helps us to it basically processes sensory information from our environment. And then next would be the temporal lobe, which would be proximal to the frontal lobe and inferior to the parietal lobe. So it is on both sides of our temples, hence the name temporal lobe. And the temporal lobe facilitates audio processing, audio and language processing, as well as it is the area that also deals with memory. Then we have the occipital lobe, which is posterior to the parietal lobe and proximal to the temporal lobe. So that's this section here. And the occipital lobe is the portion of our brain that processes visual stimuli. So right now my occipital lobe is processing what it is that I am seeing, which is the sheep brain here. Okay, so now I can, well, actually, before I continue, the next brain location is the spinal cord, which is the bottommost part of the brain stem underneath the medulla oblongata and the pons. And the spinal cord, it essentially sends messages from the brain to the rest of our body via the spinal cord. So now I will make a sagittal cut here. Oh, and oh my goodness, I keep forgetting. I think I mentioned this already, but the corpus callosum, which is this line here, these are the nerve fibers that connect the right and left hemispheres of the brain, and they also facilitate communication between the two hemispheres. So now if I were to, since I am making this incision sagittally, I figured it would be easier. Bloop. Oh, probably didn't make it deep enough. Yippee! All right, so now that I have made this sagittal cut, where is it? Where is it? Okay. So the next brain structure, there we go, structure, I couldn't think of the name. The next brain structure would be just the one that I picked. Oh goodness, I hope I didn't cut it off. The next brain structure, I don't think I did. So the next brain structure is the amygdala. Well, actually, no, not the amygdala, but the pituitary gland, which is here. And the pituitary gland secretes hormones to the rest of the glands within our body that facilitate functioning. And then the next brain structure would be the hippocampus, which would be, because that's the, so the hippocampus would be here, which is located in the temporal lobe, the temporal region of the brain. And the hippocampus, it facilitates, my neck. It facilitates memory and encoding. All right. And then if I turn the brain over, next would be the, well, this would be, well, we're going back to the brainstem. So this would be the pons, and the pons is, like I said, it's in the brainstem, and it's above the medulla oblongata, and it facilitates our sleep. Like, it helps us with our sleep cycles, and it helps us with our breathing as well, maintaining breath. Then we have underneath the pons is the medulla oblongata. The medulla oblongata here. So the medulla oblongata is underneath the pons, and that controls our reflexes as well as the what is that? It controls our reflexes as well as other involuntary movements such as posture. Okay, and then it is and the next, my last brain structure is the hypothalamus, which would be, if I can find the ventricle, the hypothalamus, oh my goodness, would be here. Whoops. Where poke. So the hypothalamus, not sure if you can see it, but the hypothalamus is in one of the 3 ventricles of the brain, which is beneath the corpus callosum, which is here. And the hypothalamus facilitates homeostasis, and it secretes hormones throughout the body. And that concludes my brain dissection. Thank you.